Hello, welcome to Voices, Prime Video's programming channel where we connect directly with the entertainment community and customers to celebrate and explore all things diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm your host, Latasha Gillespie, head of global diversity, equity, and inclusion for Amazon Studios, Prime Video, and IMDb. Today, I stand on the ancestors' shoulders and I walk in their footsteps as I bring you greetings from the land of the Gabrielino, Tongva, and Chumash indigenous people. In today's installment, we are celebrating Black history by amplifying Black voices. So, throughout the program, you will hear from thought leaders, change makers, and content creators who are changing the entertainment landscape and helping shape the future of Hollywood. Now, as a Black woman, today's programming is personal to me. Growing up in Chicago, I vividly remember the impact of seeing people who looked like me in movies and on television. It was two brothers from my home state of Illinois, Warrington and Reginald Hudlin, who gave me the gift of House Party and a little local show called AM Chicago that introduced the Windy City to her famous adopted daughter, Oprah, who, like Beyonce, only needs one name. These were pivotal moments in my life and in the Black community. The Black renaissance in entertainment that we saw in the 90s was a big part of many coming of age stories. These were the stories that made us laugh until we cried, fall deeply in love with Black love, and the stories that gave us laughter in the midst of our tears, oftentimes comforting us through some of the most difficult times in our lives and our community. In 1991, while we were celebrating the second release of the House Party movie franchise, our community was horrified by the savage beating of Rodney King by Los Angeles police officers. And when those same policemen were acquitted in 1992, race riots erupted across the city of LA and all over the country. But something else happened that year. Our beloved Toni Morrison became the first African American to win the Nobel Prize in Literature. And in the still raw epicenter of the racial uprisings, Fat Tuesdays rose from the ashes, bringing Black joy and Black laughter to the Sunset Strip. Similarly, in 2020, following the murders of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and many others, we saw Black Lives Matter protests around the world ignite a collective fight for justice and bring diverse communities together in ways we hadn't seen before. Corporations pledged accountability because you and I and everyday citizens demanded genuine systemic change. Now, unfortunately, many of those promises are still yet to be fulfilled, but yet in the midst of our pain, we continually still find joy. If history has taught us anything, it's that Black joy can persevere through Black pain. That the mother tongue of the Black community is duality, our ability to laugh until we cry or laugh in the midst of our tears is truly our superpower. So today, we hope this program brings you joy. And even when the numbers feel a little disheartening, that it makes you think, inspires you to create, and emboldens you to be the change that you wish to see in the world. So, to kick things off, we're thrilled to bring you a conversation with three Black creators driving change in entertainment and Hollywood. First up, veteran director Reginald Hudlin, who brought us films such as Boomerang and House Party and executive produced the 2020 Primetime Emmy Awards. Reginald has a new Amazon Prime Video original documentary, Fat Tuesdays. Joining him is the hilarious Guy Torrey, actor, comedian, and creator of Fat Tuesdays, and writer producer extraordinaire, Tracy Oliver, who has taken the film and television world by storm. After all, she is the first Black woman screenwriter to gross more than $100 million at the box office with her hit film, Girls Trip. She's also the creator of the hilarious scripted series First Wives Club and the Amazon original series Harlem, which has been renewed for season 2, which we can't wait for, and I know you can't either. Moderating the conversation today is Variety Magazine's senior artisans editor, Jazz Tang K. Let's get into it.
Hi, I'm Jazz Tankate, Senior Artisans Editor at Variety, and welcome to this conversation on Prime Video celebrates Black voices, Black creators. Prime Video's Voices series explores the history and data of inequities in Hollywood and ways we can change the narrative across our productions. Voices previously held conversations highlighting representation for Asian and Pacific Islanders, LGBTQ plus communities, the Latino community, Indigenous peoples, and the neurodiverse community. So let's dive right on into our conversation today and let's meet our panelists. From Fat Tuesday, we have Guy Torrey and Reginald Hudlin. And from the Prime Video original Harlem, we have Tracy Oliver. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to dive into this conversation with you all. So I'm going to go back, and Tracy, I'm going to start with you. I think, you know, you are such a talented writer. You are the genius behind Girls Trip, the reboot of the First Wife Club, and, you know, the Prime Video original Harlem. What most people don't know is the story of how you got to write the script for Girls Trip. So take us back to the blank page, that journey, and then the script process.
Yeah, so that I would say was kind of a lucky break for me. And the story was kind of weird because when when it was first announced and it was like Black girls kind of hangover Essence Fest, and it's a movie at Universal. And a lot of people know that I like drinking and partying. So at least 3 different people emailed me like, I can't think of a better person to write a party movie than you because this is your silly life. And so I was like, oh my God, this was meant for me. And then I had my team reach out, and then I heard they already hired someone. So I was like, oh. And I was really crushed about that one because I've been wanting to do something commercial and silly and fun for so long. And I always felt like there was like a really great period in the 90s. Thank you, Reggie Hudlin. Where things were fun and there were movies like House Party and Black people were like, you know, living it up and having a good time. And all of a sudden it became very serious and very like downtrodden and kind of all about Black pain. And so I was like, that's not really my thing. I'm all about like having a good time and hanging out with friends and stuff. Where are those movies? And so when I heard that it wasn't, or somebody had already been hired for it, I was kind of bummed. And then a year later, I happened to have drinks, of course, with a friend who, who was like, oh, I heard that Girls Trip movie is hiring. And I was like, wait, what? And literally, I almost missed the chance again because they were already down the road with another writer, and I begged to get a meeting on it. And then quickly, I think I had like 2 days to come up with a take, but got in there, and like fortunately, it worked out. But that was just one of those things that I had to keep like waiting for it to come back. And yeah, I was really excited when I landed the job.
It was your job, but that was the thing. You knew it was your job, so eventually what you deserved came to you. So it's a happy ending.
It was, yeah.
Love that. Love that. And you voiced your, you put it out there. And on the subject of House Party, Reginald, you know, this was a college thesis, right? And talk about how you turned that short film into the cult classic that is House Party. And for those of you out there who have not seen it, seek it out.
Yeah, well, it started when I was a little kid, and my eldest brother was studying film in college. And I was like, well, I want to make movies too. And I kept pitching him all my ideas for movies. So finally one Christmas, he gave me a present, and I opened it, and it was a book. And I opened the book, and all the pages were blank. And he goes, stop telling me your ideas and write them down. Mm-hmm. So that, you know, I spent when something funny or cool happened, I would write it in my book. Not a whole complete idea, but a fragment, right? So now I'm in college and I'm studying film, and I've got to make my thesis film. And the film school was very focused on documentary movies, which I love. And ironically, I'm doing them now. But at the time I was like, like you said, Tracy, I want to make a fun party movie. Like, what about that? I want to make Risky Business. I want to make Animal House. So I worked all summer. And then when I was packing to go back to college, I had the radio on and Bad Boy Having a Party came on by Luther Vandross. And I was like, that's such a jam. And I started making a music video in my head because back then that was pre-BET, it was pre-Black music videos. So I said, that would be a good music video. I said, that'd make a good movie. And I wrote the script that night. And then it's just a 20-minute short. It's not, I didn't write a feature overnight.
Oh.
Not. So I wrote this 20-minute short, and then I made that as my senior thesis. And then I shopped it around. And when She's Gotta Have It came out, Hollywood was kind of like, wait a minute, is there another one like that? And Spike was really just said, oh, you should call Reggie. So finally went to New Line Cinema, showed him the short, and by that time I had written a spec version of a house party feature and got it made. And then we went to Sundance, and the rest is history. You know, they keep making them, and and the nice thing is my kids are like, oh, we love the 90s, we love that music, we love those clothes, and I'm like, I'm nostalgia. So, but I get to fulfill my original job, which is to make documentaries like the one I just made with my my dear friend Guy.
Well, Guy, I mean, you started off in acting, and then you did Fat Tuesdays. Talk about, you both of you actually, Reggie and Guy, you come from the Midwest, across the river from one another. So, and you both made it into Hollywood. Talk about breaking into Hollywood and, that journey, and then going from acting to producing.
I started as stand-up. Stand-up will always be the hub, will always be the girl that brought me to the dance. So I'm gonna stay loyal to the girl that brought me to the dance, and stand-up will always be there for me. And then I got into acting, and that's the natural progression for someone who does stand-up comedy in Los Angeles or New York. You get acting, and then you get an agent and manager, and you start acting and things. But doing Fat Tuesdays was just a way of showcasing comedians that weren't being seen, and also a room for me to work out, to work on my set consistently. And, I just want to tell this story of this night that people thought were incredible. I didn't realize how incredible it was until I started hearing the stories. It was comedian Michael Blackson who first, said he missed Fat Tuesdays and these young comics should know about, the story of it. And then that was a seed that was planted that made me want to, venture out and start exploring. Okay, well, let me talk to comedians who came through Fat Tuesdays and see their recollection of it or how they felt about it. And they had stories that were incredible, jobs they had booked or managers they had met and managed them, and agents. And I started talking to patrons who came, and they were saying how important it was to them and how they needed that because LA was divided because of the Rodney King riots, and Fat Tuesdays, helped them cope and get over it. So, I quickly started, putting pieces together for a sizzle. And, 13, 14 years later, we have this incredible story that was told and directed by Reggie Hudlin. And I'm just happy that people are receiving it well. I'm happy that he wanted to do it. Like Tracy's story, I think I wanted Reggie from the start to direct this. We talked years ago, and they were pitching me all these other big name directors. And I'm like, I got a big name director too, who's a friend of mine that I would love to have direct this. And, it was Reggie. And all the stars aligned and God put it there. But that's my introduction to production on the executive side, because I started as a PA on the Martin Show. I was delivering scripts and getting coffee and picking up people's dry cleaning and things like that. So that was my way into production, the TV side or the producer side.
I mean, talking about the documentary, what a perfect duo. I mean, talk about that all coming together and, Prime Video being the perfect home for it.
Well, it really was a perfect match. again, Guy and I have done different projects together over the years. And what I love about him, yes, he's a brilliant comic. He's a politically insightful comic, but he's just a great guy. And boy, that I didn't mean to say that, but he is a great guy. And you just want to be around him. People want to be around him, which is, I think, one of the reasons why Fat Tuesday succeeded. Because he's a person always focused on the greater good. And that's what made Fat Tuesday a success. He was doing well. He was eating good. He says, but no, there needs to be a venue for Black comedians. They need to be, an opportunity to break into the mainstream, because there's always that ceiling of like, okay, we have all the Black comics we need. We have Eddie, we have Arsenio, we have Bill Cosby, we're good. Stop now. And, it was crazy because there was this huge bounty of talent waiting to break out, and the people we now think of as the mainstream. So now when we see JB Smoove, when we see Tiffany Haddish, we see Nick Cannon, those are people who got breakouts, because of Guy at Fat Tuesday. So, we're grateful for them as audience members. They're grateful because, they got their big break at this venue that he created. And the Comedy Store is grateful because they helped keep the doors open. So when Guy said, hey, Amazon wants to do this, I'm like, you mean hang out with the funniest people in the world for like a month and just talk for a couple hours? And, these are all longtime friends of mine. Me talking to Steve Harvey for a couple hours, that's my man. We did a year Burger King commercial together. JB Smoove, all these guys I've known, throughout my professional career. And it's easy for us to take our near history for granted. Like, oh, we were just hustling, we were just grinding. But you have to stop and look back and go, that was an inflection moment in popular culture, right? And that changed everything, because right now we take the ubiquity of Black comedy for granted, but it was not. It was still that one at a time, two at a time. And Guy just blew the door open when he did that. And he made a lot of millionaires. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And because his policy was anyone who wants some, come get some, it wasn't, if you're Black, if you're Latin, if you were Asian, if you were straight, if you were gay, or if you were trans, hey, come on, if you're funny, come get some. And, that was very revolutionary back then, but that speaks to his spirit. So, for me, working with someone with the spirit of Guy that's celebrating, this amazing achievement, and now hearing everybody raving about it. And Amazon has been so fantastic in terms of getting the word out and getting people tuned into it. So it's like all of the partnerships, Amazon and Guy, it's been wonderful to work with all parties.
Yeah, I would definitely say it was a good fit because, GramNet, Kelsey Grammer's production company, along with Original Productions, and Amazon, along with Reggie, just a great fit because when we pitched it to Amazon, we went a lot of places. They were the perfect fit. And it was great to be in the position to choose who you want to go with because they were interested in more than just the documentary. Are there other things surrounding it that we could possibly explore? And I said yes, because I had other ideas. And Reggie asked the same question. He didn't know that Amazon had asked that question, but Reggie was like, was it just the documentary or other stuff too that's associated with it? I said, yes, and I'm glad you asked. So being on the same page was very important to me. And along with Original Productions and GramNet, it's like an isotoner glove. It wasn't the OJ glove that didn't fit. This was an isotoner that fit very well. And all these groups came together and it made the hand just punch a hole through this whole production.
I love that. Huge success. Girls Trip earning over $100 million at the box office. Every time I know so many people who go back and revisit the film. It is a classic in itself. But Tracy, you told us your story about writing it. You also fought to be an executive producer on The Sun is also a star, raising your voice, with Warner Brothers, major studio, and your continued success. Like, talk about finding the confidence to speak up and be, you know what, I want to be an executive producer on this show, and then how that's helped you moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that writing is the worst thing ever, and it is incredibly hard, and it's like banging your head against a wall. And I've done acting, I've done producing, I've done directing, and I always feel like writing drives me the most insane. And for some strange reason, it's probably the least respected, especially on the movie side, even though I think that like everything starts on the page and everything, you know, directors and actors obviously are incredibly valuable and you need all of that collaboration. But what I was finding when I was starting out is that writing just was the least valued part of making a movie. And I was like, wow, that's crazy, because I feel like I'm dying over here. And so anyway, I just, in the process of getting movies made, I would have to write and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite so much. It'd be like 20 drafts by the time you make it to production. And once you're at like draft number 10, you're not getting paid anymore. So you're just like, you're doing it like on I guess vodka and prayers at that point. You're like, I guess a movie's gonna happen at the end of this bottle. And so at that point I was kind of like, I would really like to be more invested in I guess moving forward, if I'm going to go through this, if I'm going to put this much of my time and effort into making a movie, like I want to be like a real like equity player in it. And so I was like, what is this producing thing all about? How can I get into that? Because I just wanted to stay on the project and really have more of a say. I still understand that and I absolutely agree that the director is like the end all be all in the movie space, but I just really like the idea of staying on a project and seeing it through, not just writing something and then kind of being like, all right, here you go. And that was kind of the genesis of like producing. And then at that point, when people would come to me to write something, I would say, I'll write it, but also I would really like to produce, and not just produce a name, but like really contribute and collaborate with everybody else. And so I kind of made that like a requirement, because I knew if I was going to get involved, I was going to sacrifice so much. So I didn't want to just to be thought of as a writer for hire. I really wanted to be thought of as like a producer and a partner as well. But in the beginning, it was not an easy ask. But eventually, when you do it, and then people see, oh, she's serious about this, then they'll give you the credit because you've earned it.
Tracy, you and I are going to make a movie called Vodka and Prayers.
Oh, please.
The minute you said it, I was like, oh, that's the best. That's the best. Who wouldn't see that movie?
And we would kill it.
We would kill it.
I know we would.
I want to say Girls Trip is one of those movies. I know where I was when I saw it. I was in Dallas, Texas.
Oh, wow.
It was a Sunday. I had a show at the Improv, and I went to go right before they were late starting the show because I was in the movie watching it. And I was so happy for Tiffany. I was so happy for Tiffany. When I left the theater, I was just like texting her and tweeting like, oh my God, I'm so happy for you. It was one of those movies like House Party. It's just, man, a feel-good movie that you can watch over and over and over again. So thank you too for just some incredible work and helping me be happy. And I made my show, I was a little late.
No, you know, and what's great about Girls Trip is, and Guy knows this because we have both dealt with it. In the comedy world, you know, there's this long-standing prejudice about girls not being funny. And I just keep going, in what world are girls not funny? There's so many funny women that we both work with. And, you know, we have a whole section in Fat Tuesdays, you know, celebrating Black women comics, you know. And so Girls Trip for me was a real great stake, you know, to kill that really antiquated notion, because like the movie is hilarious. It had, you know, and its huge success is like, well, you gonna argue with the numbers? I don't think so. So it was a really, you know, do good, do well kind of achievement, and we really celebrate you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sorry. I was just gonna say the thing I'm most excited about with Girls Trip, honestly, is that I also got to be raunchy with it too. And I always was jealous of white writers because I was like, y'all get to do so much. And with Black writers, I always, and particularly with Black women, I always felt like we were in this like respectability like bubble where you don't want to be, you know, perceived as overly sexualized or overly whatever. And I was just like, but that's not fun. And I was just really happy that Universal and Will Packard and the whole team allowed like me to push my nasty stuff in there and like just kind of go for it, because I was kind of tired of like not being allowed to do that type of stuff. I was seeing it with men, but I wasn't seeing it with women, and particularly I wasn't Black women.
You know, you push that door open and you're here, and we're gonna wait patiently for vodka and prayers from Reggie and Tracy. Watch the space. You heard it first.
Well, you know what? And Amazon can have the first bid on it. You know, we'll be fair since it happened on your platform. You know, but vodka and prayers is just the best title. Oh my!
It really is a good. It's like a memoir or something too.
Get writing after this, Tracy. But I mean,
but she hates writing, so that's.
I'll send you.
I'm so glad you said that. I'm like, finally, someone's admitting how horrible it is to sit in the room. It's the worst.
It's literally the worst thing ever. Like the stuff that I have to do to type, you would like, it's just insane. I have to meditate. I have to pray. I have to like drink a glass of wine. I'm like, okay, whew, now it's just a lot. It's a lot of pressure.
See, I co-write a lot just so I won't be alone.
Yeah.
The aloneness is so brutal.
Yes.
And you're like, oh.
Guy with the props.
There we go.
There he goes.
Guy with the props and the inspiration. But to that, you know, you all have created and, you know, found your place at the table. You know, what advice would you give to those watching this panel, to up and coming creators who might not necessarily like writing and have these ideas? Like, what would you say to them? Tracy, I'll start with you.
What would I say to aspiring writers who don't like writing?
And creators about finding their seat at the table, like, and just cracking through.
Honestly, I would say for me, what's always worked, and this goes against what I see a lot of people doing, is I just write the stuff that I feel like is missing and that I want to see, versus chasing what somebody else is doing and then like trying to replicate that success. Because I feel like you're already behind if you're thinking like that. And then it's also not that authentic to me if I'm like trying to chase somebody else's like experience. Like I'll see a movie and I'll be like, damn, that was brilliant. I wish I thought of that. But then that's it. I don't want to then be like, okay, let me go write my thing that's exactly like that. And so, but I do see a lot of people doing that. So I just feel like don't chase something that doesn't belong to you, or don't go after a story that doesn't resonate. Like no matter what, just tell your truth, even if it hasn't come out yet, even if it is like, I don't know what the model is for it. Like with Girls Trip, unfortunately, the only models I had were like, I would say Hangover and Bridesmaids. And then I put House Party in the lookbook, Reggie. But that was like younger and it was men. And I was like, I don't quite have the exact template, but I know tonally what I want to do here. But yeah, I had to like kind of make it the first of that kind, if that makes sense. And you just kind of have to trust that it'll work. But my advice would be, don't put pressure on yourself to do something that somebody else is doing. Just do you and carve out your own path. You know what? If you can't find comps, you're on the right path. I actually think that's a good sign, right? What's this? What's this? Like, yeah, I mean, but when you're like, it's kind of, there's never been nothing like it. It's the much harder sell, but it's the way more satisfying project. And that's kind of been my whole career is, you know, usually whatever I'm pitching, every expert says that's a terrible idea. I mean, when I pitched House Party, they were like, look, teen movies are dead. You know, no one wants to see a movie about Black teenagers. That's a terrible idea, right? And it get passed on by every studio in town. You know, when I was doing Boomerang, you know, the head of the studio said,
I know you're gonna make a romantic comedy with Eddie Murphy. Got those broad nose and big lips. Yes, to my face.
Wow.
And you know, look, even till when I was, you know, producing Django with Quentin Tarantino, you know, they were like, I mean, look, Westerns don't travel. You're going to make a Black Western. Like, how are we going to sell this around the world? Well, $500 million later, I guess we knew, you know, but so every turn, you know, because I don't make the same movie every time, you know, I keep switching it up. You know, everyone's always like, that's not going to work. And I'm like, I'm a living refutation of what you're saying. Like, if you were right, I wouldn't be standing here in front of you. So I move with incredible confidence because, you know, my gut is pretty doggone good. If I want to see it, then probably other people want to see it. And I always feel confident in that situation. But to your question, which was advice, it's two parts. One is a lot of young people are really focused on branding. What's my brand? And I'm like, well, how about your craft? You know, can you actually focus on being good at something, and then you can figure out your outfit, you know, or your Instagram, and part of that is doing the homework historically. Like, you know, Guy and I, we both grew up, you know, watching the same TV channels, and there'd be stuff like the Comedy Theater, like at midnight on the weekend, they would show, you know, Marx Brothers and, you know, W.C. Fields movies. And I just watched them because I just wanted to really understand comedy. And then I got a little older, I started watching Japanese films and, you know, Italian neorealism and all this stuff, even before I got to college. It's just do your reps, do your push-ups, you know, understand the field that you're going in and the history of it. And, you know, the great thing about this generation, they don't have to wait for anything. Yeah. It's like this thing in your pocket. You can write, you can shoot, you can edit, and you can distribute it around the planet. You know, so, you know, when people come to me, I got an idea. Can you write it down? No, I cannot write your idea down. You write your own idea down. But I don't know how to do that. Why? Do you not know how to write? Just do it. Who cares what the rules and the format is? Just do things, right? And just keep doing things, and you'll learn from, you know, fail faster, right? Keep failing and failing till you do something good. And, you know, I just can't encourage people enough that they don't have to ask permission anymore. You can learn, there's a film school on here. You can see every movie. You can read scripts. You can do so much independently. So, like, please stop asking for permission or even help sometimes. Not that, you know, filmmaking is a team endeavor, but you'll be amazed how much you can do on your own if you are crazy hungry to do the work.
Guy, what's your advice to up-and-coming creators out there?
But first of all, Reggie, you missed Benny Hill. It was the late night shows we used to watch in St. Louis. But I always say, you know, I get ask this question all the time as a stand-up on the road doing shows. People come to me, comedians, and ask, hey, what can I do to get put on? I always say, find your it first. Find your it. What is it? What's your gift? It may not be writing. It could be directing. It could be acting. It could be, something else. But find your it, and then find other people in your city. I don't care what city you're in. If you want to be a writer, then find someone who wants to direct. Find someone who wants to act. Someone who wants to be a DP, and then like Voltron, come together and put a project together. And like Reggie said, you can shoot stuff on your phone. Yeah. It's very simple. There's no excuses anymore. You don't have to be in LA. You don't have to be in New York. You can be right in Mayberry, whatever, little town, and you can get your production done. With Instagram and with social media, you can find somebody in your town who's a writer or director, and they're aspiring to be, and y'all come together and put that project together. But you gotta stick with it. You gotta believe in it. You gotta see it. I've been working on this documentary for 13 years total, and I heard all the no's. That documentaries, they don't make money. They don't. It's a passion project. You're gonna have a hard time selling it. And I listened to them, but I kept going. I just saw the finish line, and I knew this day was gonna come with my faith and just hard work. And we got it done. So my advice is find your it, find other people with their its, come together and make your own production and then put it out there. There's agencies now that have departments that do nothing but look for talent on the internet. So now that writer has something that they wrote that they can show. That director has something they shot, they directed that they can show. The actor or actress has something that they just shot that they so you all have something that you all collectively came together, and now you have something for your reel, and keep doing it.
There's always, each generation has a young and broke crew that comes together.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I remember I was living on 150, 149th Street in Harlem, right? And I knew, 5 blocks up, Angela Bassett was there, and Cassandra Wilson was there, and Greg Tate was there. And then there was a whole Brooklyn crew with, Spike Lee and all those folks. And we were all broke. We were all had complete vision. We'd have a party over someone's house. You'd be sitting on someone's mattress, talking, obsessively about whatever you're talking about doing. And, that time is really valuable because you're sharpening your sword. You're sharpening your sword, because when the window of opportunity comes, it's like this. It opens and then it closes. So when it opens, you got to go, okay, I got to jump through that hole, right? That hole ain't big enough for you, but you got to fit through it. Boom! And then when you get there, you got to make 1,000 decisions really quickly. And if any one of those decisions is wrong, you ruin the scene. You got the wrong lamp in the shot. Oh my God, I can't even hear the dialogue. I'm too busy looking at that lamp. So you got to really learn how to think and think holistically and have it so internalized that you understand that your subconscious is faster than your conscious, right? So you got to go, that's wrong. And you may not be able to explain it, but you know it's wrong, right? But you know it's wrong not because you're some, born genius. It's because you did the work, you did the push-ups, and then you go, no, my instincts are right, because my instincts come from the craft that I've developed, my 10,000 hours.
Yeah. And I would say, you guys are spot on, down to the being broke and the crew and all of that stuff. But yeah, how I got started was doing Awkward Black Girl, this web series with Issa Rae. And at the time, back then she was Joisa. We went to Stanford together, and we were both so broke, and our parents were so disappointed in us because they were like, y'all went to Stanford and you're broke? Like, what was the point? And so we were like, we still just really believe in the arts, and like, we're gonna do this thing. And it was kind of like, if it doesn't work out, then we could always pivot and go do, law school or something, but let's give this a shot. And yeah, we shot in my apartment. She's from LA, so we shot in her dad's office. We just got all these free locations and then just called up the homies. I went to USC Film School, so I borrowed equipment from them. They didn't know. I was like checking it out on the weekends, and then having a current USC student return it by Monday so they didn't get fined. We were just doing all these things to kind of just put something together, but that became the calling card for Insecure and like a bunch of other projects for us. And nobody wanted it. Like, because we were trying to give it to people and they were like, no, we're good. And it just was because they didn't really see the vision for it. And they didn't really see, I'll be honest, like we had people to Issa's face say, you don't look like a star. You don't look like you belong on TV. And we were just like, well, we don't agree with that. So we're just going to make it. And then the audience rallied, and then Hollywood had to come back around, but we kind of forced our way into that. And honestly, like a lot of people wouldn't have done it because we were so broke. And it takes a lot of faith, like to keep working on something when you got no sign that's telling you this is going to work out. But we were just kind of operating on like faith, and we just believed that people would enjoy it and that it would work. But man, it was tough.
I think ignorance is a big part of success, because any successful person will tell you, man, if I knew what I was doing, I would have never even tried that. Right? You just got to I always think about the Wright brothers, right? The Wright brothers had a bicycle shop, and they figured out how to make a plane fly. Not the top scientists of the day, because the top scientists knew why a plane couldn't fly, but the guys in the bicycle shop didn't know. So be the Wright brothers and just run your little stupid ass in there and come out the other side knowing something because you did it.
That's
and go to an Ivy
great.
League school, because that worked for Issa and Tracy and for me. Somehow it worked out for Guy too. But that's another point, which is that a lot of people will say you can't make it because you're not cool enough, or you're not, whatever it is. They always have a reason, like say, oh, she doesn't look like a star. Everyone's got a reason or excuse why you don't look like the template, right? Mm-hmm. And that's because in this world there are heat seekers and there's talent seekers, right? Mm-hmm. And if you don't have taste, if you don't actually know what's good, then you follow heat. And you go, but that's what's hot, right? And you chase what's already been proven, or something that looks like that thing that's already been proven. But if you have taste, then you can spot talent. And that talent can be unproven. That talent can be considered over the hill. Mm-hmm. But you just, no. That's dope. That's dope, and y'all don't get it. And it's harder to be in the world of talent seekers, right? Yeah. Because it requires a level of vision, and other people may not share your vision. But man, the rewards are really satisfying on that path. And I've always been on that path.
Amazing. Reginald, Guy, Tracy, thank you so much for that incredible conversation, those incredible ideas, and the inspiration that you've given to this audience tuning in. Thank you for joining Prime Video Voices.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jazz.
Thank you.
I am loving the conversation on the screen, but I'm also loving the conversation in the chat. So please, we are enjoying your engagement. Make sure you tweet, make sure you post on Instagram, Facebook, whatever your social media is, hashtag Prime Video Voices. But Myrtle, we're so happy that you're engaging with us, and I'm so glad that you found the advice for writers super helpful. Natalie, you rewatched Girls Trip recently. That's amazing. It's a classic. Can never see it too many times. And Francesca, we love that you love Harlem. We love it too. We can't wait to bring you season 2. So a lot of good things being shared. So I just want to thank Jazz again and thank our panelists, Tracy, Reginald, and Guy. What a powerful conversation about full circle moments, purposeful partnerships, and manifestation. I love how Tracy just took charge of her role in the Girls Trip film and pushed to be an executive producer. Hopefully that encouraged someone out there to push for what you really want. That was a bold and necessary move for her to open the door for future filmmakers. And hearing Reginald reflect on his early young and broke days in New York with Angela Bassett and Spike Lee was priceless. And what a time it must have been to be alive. For our viewers who are creators on the rise, I hope that you were taking notes. I want to share with you some of the gems that I caught in the presentation. Number 1, stop comparing yourself to others and get clear on how you can authentically share your stories. I want to thank Tracy for that tidbit. Number 2, focus less on your brand, focus on your craft, and learn as much as you can about the field you're going into and the history of it. That Reginald brought us that piece of advice. And lastly, Guy said, find your it. What's your gift? And then find other people to help create with you. If you have other pieces of advice, please put it in the chat. I love someone anonymously wrote, fail faster. I'm glad that you caught that. Put yours in the chat and let's share and learn together. Such great advice. And again, I hope it encourages you to go deeper with your work and listen. If vodka and prayers comes to life, you better believe I'll be watching. So stay tuned for that. Now that we've heard from creators on what they've seen in the industry, let's dig into the industry data. Coming up, we have Dr. Darnell Hunt, Dean of Social Sciences at the University of California, Los Angeles. He'll be reviewing their in-depth Hollywood diversity report that zeroes in on historical data and where the film and television industry is today. So be prepared to learn and be enlightened. Dr. Hunt, over to you.
Hi, I'm Darnell Hunt. I'm Dean of Social Sciences at UCLA and Professor of Sociology and African American Studies. Today, I'm here to talk to you about our Hollywood Diversity Report, which is a product of the Institute for Research on Labor and Employment at UCLA. The 2021 Hollywood Diversity Report was subtitled Pandemic in Progress for obvious reasons because of the pandemic we've been enduring for the last several years. This is an important graphic that anchors a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today. It talks about US population shares between the white population and the minority population between 1960 and about 2050. Here's the blue line that's telling you what happens or what's happening with the white population. And the gold line shows the minority population. In 2020, which is the year we're going to be talking about today, people of color made up nearly 40.3% of the US population. As you can see, somewhere in the 2040s, the two lines cross. And from that point forward, minorities will be the largest share of the US population. So the data for the 2021 Hollywood Diversity Report includes 185 films released in 2020. And of course, during the pandemic, many of those films were released via streaming platforms. 461 scripted TV shows from the 2019-20 TV season, lead talent, race and gender data, director, race and gender, show creator, race and gender, writer diversity, box office figures, audience demographics, and international marketing data. And last but not least, household viewer and social media ratings. So let's talk about film so we can get a sense of what the trends have been in recent years in film with respect to race, diversity, inclusion. Film leads by race, we're looking at the years 2012 through 2020. The blue line represents the white share of film leads, the gold line, the people of color share of film leads, and the white line, what was happening with the US population. As we can see here, white film leads decreased over this period from 84.9% of all leads to 60.3%. Meanwhile, the corresponding line for minorities increased from 15.1% to 39.7%. And you can see here, when we compare this to the population line, for the first time in history, in 2020, we were close to proportionate representation for people of color. But of course, not all minority groups were equally represented in film. In fact, African Americans drove a lot of what was happening among film leads in 2020. Nearly half of all people of color film leads were in fact Black, 19%. If we look at film directors by race, looking at the same setup here, we see that white film directors decreased from about 89% in 2012 to 74.6% in 2020. Meanwhile, people of color directors increased from 11% to 25%, 25.4%, more than doubling. But still, compared to the population, we see we have a long way to go among directors in film. Again, we see that African Americans were driving a lot of what was happening in film among directors. More than half of all people of color directors, 15.1% overall, were Black in 2020. If we look at film writers, we see a similar pattern. 92.2% of all film writers were white in 2012, decreasing to about 74.1% in 2020. The corresponding line for people of color, 7.8% of the writers were minority in 2012, more than tripling to 25.9% in 2020. But as you can see, compared to the population, we still have a ways to go. So there's a big gap there. So I think the big takeaway in film is that we've seen a lot of progress on screen, not as much behind the camera among directors and writers. And much of the increase that we've seen in the last 10 years or so has been driven by African Americans. Now let's look at film writers by race again. 13.5% in 2020 were African American, compared to 12.4% other writers of color. And you can see here that African Americans, as we noted earlier, are driving a lot of the increase for people of color among writers in film. In executive suites, however, the story is still one of white male domination. Among the chairs and CEOs of the top studios in 2020, 91% were white 82% male. If we look at senior executives, 93% white, 80% male, and then unit heads like marketing, casting, and so forth, 86% white, 59% male. So where a lot of decisions are being made, we're still talking about a space that's largely dominated by white men, despite some of the progress we're seeing on the screen. Let's look at television. Here we break it down, broadcast versus cable versus digital, given the differences between those different types of platforms, so we can see what's happening in each. Between the 2011-12 season and the 2019-20 season, broadcast leads by race, the white share decreased from 94.9% to 76.8%. Meanwhile, the people of color share more than quadrupled from 5.1% to 23.2%. But again, compared to the population, we still have a ways to go. In fact, people of color would have to nearly double their share of leads in broadcast to reach proportionate representation. And as we saw in film, African Americans are driving a lot of that progress among leads. In fact, they accounted for nearly half of all people of color leads in broadcast, or 11.6% of leads overall in 2019-2020. If we look at cable by race leads, we see here the white share of leads in cable decreased even more markedly from 85.3% to 66.4% in 2019-20. Meanwhile, the people of color share increased from 14.7 to 33.6. So not quite proportionate representation, but certainly moving in the right place. And one of the explanations for this, of course, is the ways in which cable networks tend to target specific audience segments. So you have Oprah Winfrey Network, for example, Black Entertainment Television, and other networks that target African Americans, which account for a lot of that growth among cable leads for people of color. And we can see here again that African Americans made up nearly half of all people of color leads in cable in 2019-20. What about digital and streaming platforms? Here in the 2013-14 season, 90.9% of digital leads were white, decreasing to 69% in 2019-20. Again, the corresponding line for people of color from 9.1% in 2013-14 to 31% in 2019-20, more than triple what we saw during that period. And again, compared to the population line, we see a positive trend in the right direction, but we still have somewhat of a gap that needs to be closed there. And unlike what we saw in film and in cable and broadcast, African Americans weren't driving the process in quite the same way. In fact, they only accounted for about a third of all people of color leads in digital platforms. And what that's saying is that other people of color were more represented on digital platforms than they were in broadcast, cable, or in film. Looking at credited broadcast writers, and writers are important, of course, because they're the people telling the stories. 92.3% were white in 2012-13, 73.6% in 2019-20. The corresponding line for people of color, again, nearly triple what we saw in the first year we looked at this, from 9.7% to 26.4%. But again, looking at the population line, we still have a ways to go, a gap of more than 16 points between the population and the people of color share. And as we saw in broadcast, we see a similar pattern in cable. 88.2% were white in 2012-2013, 71.4% in 2019-20. The corresponding line for people of color, 11.8% in 2012-13, 28.6% in 2019-20, nearly triple, but still, compared to the population, a sizable gap that needs to be closed among credited cable writers. And last but not least, among writers on digital platforms, 89.2% were white in 2014-15, down to 75.8% in 2019-20. The corresponding line for writers of color in digital, 10.8% 2014-15, up to 24.2% in 2019-20, a little bit more than double. But again, still a sizable gap. So the story here, of course, among writers, critical positions in terms of telling stories that are meaningful, we see that people of color on all three platforms still have a ways to go. So let's look at show creators. Show creators are important, of course, because they're the people who come up with the premise, with the concept, and pitch the show idea that gets greenlighted and eventually makes it to the air. In broadcast, in 2011-12, 95.8% of show creators were white. And you can see by 2019-20, that figure had decreased, but not that much, to 90.2%. The corresponding line for show creators of color in broadcast, 4.2% in 2011-12, more than double in 2019-20. But again, when you compare it to the population line, show creators of color would have to more than quadruple their share in broadcast to reach proportionate representation. So you can see here, as behind the scenes decision-making becomes more important, the presence of people of color declines. When we look at the 2019-20 season up close, and we look at the breakdown by race, we see that African Americans made up nearly half of all show creators of color in 2019-20, but overall, only 4.5% of the show creators in broadcast. Looking at cable, 92.6% of the show creators in 2011-12 were white, down to 79.4% in 2019-20. The corresponding line for show creators of color in cable, 74.4% in 2011-12, up to 20.6% in 2019-20. So more than double. But again, they would have to double that again to reach proportionate representation in the cable space. And looking at specific racial groups, here we see that African Americans, like we saw among leads, are really driving the process in cable. 13% of show creators in cable overall were African American, which is very close to their share of the US population. But among show creators of color in cable, African Americans represented nearly 2/3 of that total. If we look at digital show creators by race, we see the figure declines from 93.8% for white show creators in 2013-14 down to 85.3% in 2019-20. The corresponding line for show creators of color in digital, 6.2% in 2013-14, up to 14.7% in 2019-20. But again, the gap between the representation of show creators of color in digital and their share of the population is huge. And we have a long way to go before the people actually pitching the stories that get greenlighted look anything like America in digital. And if we break this down by specific group, we see here that again, African Americans made up nearly half of the total for show creators of color in digital during the 2019-20 season, accounting for 7.4% of show creators of color overall in the digital space. As we did with film, we looked at the executive suites in television, and lo and behold, we see a similar pattern of white male domination. Among the chairs and CEOs of 74 networks we looked at, 92% of them were white, 68% were male. Among senior executives, 84% were white and 60% were male. Among unit heads, 87% were white and 54% were male. Here are the covers for our Hollywood diversity reports, both the film report and the TV report. The film report is typically released right before Oscars, usually the week before Oscars. And the TV report comes out in the fall, usually the week before Emmys. Both of these reports can be downloaded at socialsciences.ucla.edu. The big takeaway is that we're seeing a lot of progress on screen for people of color in recent years, largely because I think it's been clear from the findings of our research that diversity sells, diverse audiences, and remember 42.7% of the population is people of color. Diverse audiences want diverse content. However, we have not seen the same progress behind the camera among show creators, most notably, among writers, a little bit less so, and certainly the executive suites do not look like America. Thank you.
Sally, thank you for your comment. We're glad that you're finding this information useful. Myrtle, absolutely. This information will live on. It's going to stay on the Amazon Live page as well as our YouTube page. And you can also find it on the Amazon Studios Diversity, Equity, Inclusion page. All those links will be included in the chat, so stay tuned for that. And as much as I'm loving these comments, I'm loving your handles. So thank you, Mama Spice, for joining us today. And thank you, Recycle Truth. We're glad to have you as a part of today's celebration of Black voices. Please continue to post and leave your comments in the chat. We're enjoying this two-way dialogue. And let's all thank Dr. Hunt. As the saying goes, men lie, women lie, but numbers don't. The evidence of change is certainly being seen in front of the camera, but there's still much work to do behind the camera, particularly in the areas of writers. So if you are a creative writer, this is the calling out to you. We need to hear your voices, and executive producers. So those of you who have an amazing idea for a concept for a show or a film, we need to be hearing your voice as well. And that's one of the reasons why we created the Howard Entertainment Program here at Amazon Studios. It was to provide HBCU students the knowledge about the business side of television and film, and actually pipeline them into executive roles within studios. So shout out to all of my Howard Entertainment current students and alum. So glad to have you as a part of our family. If you need more information to digest what you heard from Dr. Hunt, you can download the report he mentioned by visiting the website in the chat, socialsciences.ucla.edu. And after seeing all of these figures, I'm sure I'm not the only one left wondering, well, where do we go from here? Glad you asked. Up next, we have answers in the form of Erica Shimizu Banks, founder of SHISO, an intersectional equity consulting firm and strategic consultant to Color of Change. Together, they are taking Dr. Hunt's information and turning it into action. Erica will shed light on Beyond the Statement and Change Industries, two very important initiatives that are actively working to close the race gap across multiple sectors. So Erica, lead the way.
Hi, everyone. I'm thrilled to join you for Amazon Voices to talk about how we can move from information to action. My name is Erica Shimizu Banks. I am the founder of SHISO, an intersectional equity consulting firm that creates systems and frameworks to elevate and restore equity at companies and organizations. And I consult for the civil rights organization, Color of Change. Color of Change is the nation's largest online racial justice organization. They help people respond effectively to injustice in the world around us. As a national force online driven by 7 million members, they move decision makers in corporations and government to create a more humane and less hostile world for Black people in America. Their campaigns and initiatives win changes that matter by designing strategies powerful enough to fight racism and injustice in politics and culture, in the workplace and the economy, in criminal justice and community life, and wherever we exist. They are changing both the written and unwritten rules of society. They mobilize their members to end practices and systems that unfairly hold Black people back and champion solutions that move us all forward. I'm privileged to work on 2 projects for Color of Change that I'm excited to tell you about today that build on the data Dr. Hunt just shared, the Beyond the Statement campaign, and the Change Industries initiative. You manage what you measure. Companies make their priorities clear through the types of data they track and the data they don't, the results of that tracking, and whether they choose to release those results in full transparency after some obfuscation or not at all. Diversity data and KPIs, key performance indicators, at many companies have only recently become public, since engineer and founder Tracy Chu issued a direct call to action to the tech industry in October 2013 with a Medium post entitled, "Where are the numbers?" The next year, Apple, Facebook, and Google all released their first diversity reports. Since then, companies beyond tech regularly release their diversity reports and include demographic data and DEI values, diversity, equity, and inclusion values, and goals in their S1s and 10Ks. After listening to Dr. Hunt's overview of historical data and the latest numbers on the diversity of studio executives, which don't look too different, I'm sure many of you can't help but wonder, what do we do with this? Where do we go from here? How do we change things for the better? That's the motivating power of information. When we learn something new, we are moved to act on what we have learned. Now, the data has been telling the same story ever since these reports were first released, now almost 10 years ago. And yet, today, Black professionals hold only about 3% of all executive or senior leadership roles, and less than 1% of Fortune 500 CEOs are Black. As Dr. Hunt shared in his 2020 UCLA Hollywood Diversity Report, it found that heads of studios are 91% white, senior management teams 93% white, while unit heads are 86% white. What will it take to act? Many companies publicly pledged their intentions for change after the deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery sparked a nationwide uprising, resurging the Black Lives Matter movement that started with the murder of 17-year-old Trayvon Martin in 2012. Few have acted on those pledges. And in my work advising companies on how to build products, platforms, and organizations with intersectional equity as a foundation, I am very familiar with the excuses, the obfuscations, and the objections from even the most seemingly well-meaning companies. I hear it's hard to collect demographic information on our employees because we have a global workforce. Or we do make our data public, it's just not on our website. Or we would love to undertake an equity audit, but we don't want to give the public the wrong impression that we're trying to mitigate a future problem. And yet, when I provide solutions to these exaggerated problems, they're graciously accepted and then often shelved. I've since learned that what is missing in this gap between intention and action is reflection and accountability. And that's why I'm so proud to work with Color of Change to provide a path forward for companies in two crucial industries, tech and entertainment, who are asking these questions. Where do we go from here? And how do we change things for the better? And for companies who are satisfied with the status quo, these resources we have developed will still be here to help you correct course when your customers, your audiences, and the public at large demand it. Corporations must work closely with racial justice groups, civil rights advocates, and other social movements in order to dismantle systemic racism. Color of Change launched the Beyond the Statement campaign and the Change Industries initiatives to hold companies accountable for those pledges. For Beyond the Statement, I worked with Color of Change to develop a framework and assessments for equity audits and accountability at tech companies, based on my experience championing DEI efforts at Google and standing up to racism and sexism at Pinterest, and also built on research developed by experts at the intersection of civil rights, labor, and technology, such as Professor Kimberly Crenshaw, Dr. Moya Bailey, Dr. Ruha Benjamin, Dr. Safia Noble, Clyde Ford, and Laura Murphy, and institutions such as the AI Now Institute and PolicyLink. The framework identifies 6 areas of action. First, increase transparency. Second, evaluate products for discrimination. Third, hire, recruit, and support a diverse workforce. 4, hire and empower internal civil rights staff. 5, hold internal decision makers accountable. And 6, divest from police and mass incarceration. This framework provides 6 concrete actions technology firms must take at a minimum to act in alignment with their values and ensure a more humane and less hostile world for Black people. For the Change Industries initiative, we took a similar approach to develop a universal roadmap to guide cultural industries to advancing racial justice systemically. There are currently 3 Change Industries verticals: Change Music, Change Fashion, and Change Hollywood. The 5 steps of the universal roadmap are: 1, invest in Black talent and careers; 2, commit to transparent reporting and equitable representation of Black people; 3, invest in content that advances racial justice; 4, invest in Black safety, and 5, invest in the growth and prosperity of Black communities. Each Change Industries vertical empowers and supports industry leaders by providing industry-specific commitments, complete with milestones, KPIs, resources, and reporting. While there have been many corporate pledges in the last few years, as we have discussed, Change Industries takes accountability a step further, creating inside-outside partnerships that allow for a commitment feedback loop and regular progress to goals check-ins. These accountability partnerships pair Color of Change's external perspective and their members' collective pressure with a company's internal values and will for change. Systemic change won't happen with individual actions. We need companies and institutions to join in the movement and recognize that when we work on behalf of the most marginalized, we work for the betterment of all. Let the data, unburied, unvarnished, guide the actions we take to make systemic change. If you're in Hollywood, music, or fashion, sign on to the Change Hollywood, Change Music, or Change Fashion roadmaps at changeindustries.org. If you're in tech, visit beyondthestatement.com/tech-framework. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Erica. If Dr. Hunt's message of the numbers was causing us to hold our breath, you giving us a bridge from intention to action was the exhale that we needed. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing. Your work specifically with Color of Change shows us what we can do, each of us, to close the gap between intention and action. This is vital to uprooting systemic racism and providing equity and inclusion across multiple industries. All of you, I want to thank you for being an accountability partner to the leaders in the industry and inspiring change so that the next generation can see themselves taking up space in any room. As Erica mentioned, if you're in Hollywood, music, or fashion, you can learn more by going to changeindustries.org. If you're in tech, visit beyondthestatement.com/tech-framework. Again, both links are in the chat. Our next panel features some of the most brilliant minds in comedy who just happen to be Black women. Moderated by Deputy Editor at Essence, Corey Murray, she is joined by the one and only original bad girl of comedy, Lunel, alongside actresses Zainab Johnson from the Amazon original series Upload and Shaniqua Shonday from the Amazon original series Harlem, created by Tracy Oliver, who you saw just a little while ago. Get ready for some truth and humor. Without further ado, ladies.
Hi, welcome to Prime Video Voices, and we're going to be talking with 3 brilliant actresses known for their comedic roles and 2 who are also stand-up comedians. I'm Corey Murray. I am the Deputy Editor of Essence, and I'm going to be joined by Lunel, who appears in Fat Tuesdays, Zainab Johnson, who stars in Upload, and Shaniqua Shonday, who co-stars in Harlem. So let's learn a little bit about each of you. Lunel, let's start with you.
What do you want to know?
Well, how did you get your start? I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Okay, let's start the laughter. Let's get it out. I'm clearly nervous because you guys are so fantastic and I'm a huge fan.
Okay. You got this, Corey. You got this.
I got it. So let's how did each of you get your start in the business?
Okay, that's not a short story though. Are you sure you want to ask that question?
Can you make it just a little short?
How did I get my start in comedy? I was in musical theater and television before I started comedy. And I think I had done 2 films as well before I started comedy. And I just had a girlfriend who was a roommate. Her boyfriend ran a club in Long Beach. She said I was funny because he used to hang around the house. So if you ever want to come down to the club, I'll put you up. And I had at that time, I thought I had no intention of being a stand-up comedian, but I thought of some things that I thought might be funny. And I went down there, killed the very first time I was ever on stage, stepped off stage. And the first person I ever met after I stepped off stage was the late Robin Harris. And he introduced me to more people and we kept on going, this snowball effect.
Shaniqua, how about you?
Well, I guess for me, it started up. I saw What's Love Got to Do with It with Angela Bassett, and music has always been a language for me. And so I was like, oh, there is a world where you can sing and act and have fashion and all of those things. And said I wanted to do that. And so was acting in plays as much as I could and went to high school for it. And then the family and I were originally from New York. And so the idea was we would always go back to New York, but we came out here to visit colleges and then had the Hollywood dream. The whole family moved out with me. I had an incredible support system. And I just knew I was going to be in the next Bow Wow movie as soon as I graduated high school. That did not happen. But that pretty much was my start. It was a dream. As soon as high school ended, I moved to California and been chasing and hitting the pavement ever since.
You had your sights set pretty high when I worked with the great Bow Wow.
Oh yes, I got to be in Shad Moss's movie.
Bow Wow was a big thing for a little bit. For a little bit, he was a big deal.
Was hot. Lottery ticket was out. Like he was the thing for teens.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
Yeah.
Zainab, how about you?
I actually had no idea that I wanted to or could ever be a stand-up comedian until the day I got on stage, but I always loved it. I remember my mom, I grew up in New York too. I grew up in Harlem, and I remember being like around, I don't know, 8 or 9, and they had something called the Uptown Comedy Club that like Flex Alexander hosted. And I remember my mom got free tickets and she snuck me in, and I was like a 10-year-old. And I don't know why, like I have 12 brothers and sisters, 4 older than me. So she could have snuck anybody in, but she snuck me in. And so now, like, I look back at like things that have happened in my life and I'm like, oh, I feel like I was always kind of like in some sort of school to get to where I am today, but I just didn't know it, which I feel like is like the best journey because you're sort of like absorbing all the information you need without knowing that you're getting the information you need. And I moved to LA and somebody told me I was funny and I tried it and it worked.
And you are.
Thank you, Lunel.
Yeah, you are.
Each of you are making your own mark, but let's look back to the past. Is there anyone particular for each of you that has inspired you in your craft?
Listen, I'm about to be so predictable. But my person for any kind of inspiration will always be Beyonce. Will always be. I see her and I see the potential of what a Black woman can do in a world that tells us there is no space for us with hard work. And I don't want to have to come after me, but not even sometimes just like naturally God-given ability, just with hard work. This woman is able to sing ranges that she didn't have accessible. To me, it just like shows that if you don't have to be the most talented, you don't have to have the most connections. If you just work incredible, I know Zainab said, no, Beyonce.
I'm like, is this a compliment?
No, I'm a Beyonce stan. But there are some people who are just being in the industry who are just naturally gifted, who just naturally got it. You see them perform and you like, it's a rap, it's whatever you want is yours. But the person who works harder will get it before them, just because I'm going to stretch this muscle and this skill as much as is possible. And I see that with Beyonce. She's not naturally an opera singer, but she's created that for herself. And so I see that like whatever this industry might not feel like I can naturally do, I know I can do it if I work hard enough. And that's what I see when I look at Beyonce. So
that wasn't predictable at all.
Yeah.
I didn't know you were going to say Beyonce.
Yeah. Okay. I'm a stan. So.
Well, I think my earliest, like probably inspiration, if I think like very comedy specific, I would say Whoopi Goldberg. And I would say Whoopi Goldberg because the first time I ever saw Whoopi, she was, I think maybe in Color Purple. So that was very dramatic. And then, you know, when you find somebody and you're so compelled by them, then it forces you to go down the rabbit hole and figure out what else they've done, right? And then I feel like my mom showed me like Jumping Jack Flash. Then I saw Ghost. Like I just felt like Whoopi Goldberg was this super, super talented person. Then as I got into like stand-up specifically, Lunel, you're one of the people that inspired me. I remember that I used to go to, I used to visit LA like when I was in college, and I would go to Tripping on Tuesdays. Lunel, that was like the thing that came after Fat Tuesdays, right?
Yes.
And you were one of the only women. I would see you, Tiffany had, there was very few women performing on that stage. And that was inspiring. And even in the moment, I didn't kind of know it, but when I look back at it, I'm like, wow, there were these images that let me know like it's okay to, like, you know, plant yourself in a space and command that space and be who you are and be funny and be unapologetic. And so, yeah, you've done that for me. You should know that.
Well, thank you. If I didn't, I do now. Thank you, girl. For me, it's gonna be, I have to say two people.
Okay.
First, odd as it sounds, one of the people who inspired me was Roseanne Barr, because she was everything they said she shouldn't be to do comedy. She wasn't super attractive. She wasn't small and petite. She had like 4 kids. She was going through a bad marriage. She was a waitress, but yet she had got told, "You're the funniest person I've ever met. You're the funniest waitress I've ever met. You ought to do stand-up." And she came in, she became a boss, and actually changed television with her, you know, executive decisions and things like that. And also I have to throw a shout out to Laura Hayes, who is also from Oakland, the same streets as me. And Mark Curry was the first one out of Oakland. Then there was Laura, and then I came trickling behind. And I sort of, I sort of like trailed Laura all around Los Angeles, and she taught me and showed me. And also the other one from Oakland, of course, is Paul Mooney. So I had like those 3 specific people that tried sort of help mold me and let me know that I really didn't have to change. At some point, people are going to accept me for me, and that has happened.
Lunel, you are one of the bright stars of Fat Tuesdays, which is an excellent docuseries. And if anyone hasn't watched it, please watch it.
It is so good.
Well, one of the things I learned is that Fat Tuesdays was one of the few places that Black female comics were encouraged. But can you tell us, what was that experience like, especially in the larger comedy world? Did you feel that Fat Tuesdays was your only place that you could really shine, or how did you navigate challenges elsewhere as you were rising up?
Well, I don't do just Black humor. So that's not the only place that I fit in. I can do the Jewish Community Center and get just as many laughs. But the place to be seen and the place that you want to be, the place with the most electricity in the room, the place where you could really maybe get out of there and go somewhere, was absolutely Fat Tuesday. And it was Guy, and Guy alone, who encouraged the females, who let the females have a chance. A lot of other guys, they just looked at us like a bug on the wall and, you know, okay, maybe I'll let you up, maybe you have to fight more. But God would give you a chance to either go up there and create a name for yourself, or to die a slow and painful death.
One other thing I appreciate about Fat Tuesdays was learning, and I would like you all to answer this question, is how much comedy kind of bonds the Black community a bit, because watching like all of those people come up, I mean, whether it's Fat Tuesdays or Def Comedy Jam, I was like, I personally remember like using that, like my mother didn't take me to a comedy club, but we would watch Raw together as a family. You know, like we would really come together. How do you guys feel that way, that comedy really helps? Why is it so prevalent in the Black community that we embrace it so well?
I mean, I would say probably because there's also so much pain and trauma, you know, and there's so much policing. There's so, you know, there's so much no, and you know, comedy is, I think, not the great equalizer, but probably the greatest healer, you know? And I mean, I think like no one else, Black people know how to make the best out of whatever, you know? And so that's what I would think. I do think that we come together, and I mean, we're just talented. We, you know, it's like, it's the same as watching like a singing documentary, and you realize like, oh, that singer knew that singer, and that's how that's connected, you know? But I just, I don't know. I feel like, who doesn't like to laugh? You know, and so of course that's going to bring people together because it feels good.
I feel like, where else are they going to get the truth at? You can't listen to the news and get the stone cold truth. Our politicians have all let us down. Our education has been a farce. So the place that you can go where you think you're going to hear like-minded people, they're going to talk and say the things that you've been thinking and the things that you would really like to say, is the comedy club. And specifically Black, and I'm going to give a shout out to the Latin comics too. Black and, you know, the underdog. We are going to bring it to you raw, straight, no chaser. If it's about a riot, if it's about a trial, if it's about a drunk driving, if it's about an earthquake, we're the ones who are going to cut straight to the chase and talk directly to the people, because we are, in fact, the people.
Now, I'm just going to piggyback off of what Zainab was saying, is that, and I agree, there's so much adversity that has just been in the Black experience in America, and that so you're just needing a place to have joy. And that's what I love so much about our people, is that we find joy, like not in everything, but it almost feels like in everything, because we are just such a beautiful celebratory people, community. We gather, we love, and when you have so many places outside of this world or outside of your household that's telling you what to do, and you constantly have to go places and just, you feel like you have to apologize just for your skin color, or constantly find yourselves or I find myself in a dynamic where I have to explain my existence. These moments where you can find a joy of brevity and breath, where you can and commune with others. We reach for them, and I think there's no other people, like honestly, people of color, like Black and Latin groups, that just know how to celebrate, know how to really have joy. And I think that's why comedy is so prevalent in our community, is because when you don't get a chance to breathe and laugh on the day-to-day basis in public unapologetically. Like we were talking about, sorry, not to be long-winded. Here we go about that long-winded bit right now. But just seeing Black people in public laughing can seem like a crime to some people. And so having those moments to just gather in family and around the television set, it really is not only just a bonding experience, but an escape from reality that I think we deserve, we need sometimes.
No, we do. Yeah. So Sanika, we're going to stay with you because you are a fan favorite on the Amazon series Harlem. Very good. Love it. Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Play the hell out of Angie, who pushes back conventional standards while bringing viewers to tears of laughter. So we have to know, what is your secret for tackling weighty topics while still maintaining the funny in your respective role?
Well, honestly, the secret, that's really good. The comedy is already there. Like the brilliance of, and so is the heaviness, it's already there. Tracy Oliver did such a wonderful job of, one, giving you a script that's laugh out loud, because you don't usually get that. If it's really funny, then you don't usually get medicine as well. You don't get topics. So she did, the writers did such a brilliant job of giving our potatoes and also our candy. And so for me, my secret was honestly to try to find what the issues I know women like Angie deal with, which is being burdened with, or at least as Angie's burden was not having the exterior match the interior. And so that what it felt like always, that juxtaposition in itself felt like something that she would always be battling with, anxiety and self-doubt and self-image issues. And so just finding ways to sometimes it was literally in the behavior in what she ate. There was a lot of times I would give her like bready things to just stuff in there, because I know that's comforting. And then when I'm feeling anxious, I just want something that tastes good. So, but a lot of it won't even mean, a lot of it was just the brilliance of Tracy Oliver. She gave me a wonderful platter to play with, really and truly.
Well, you ate it up, as they like to say.
For sure.
Zainab, your comedy, oh my God, I just watched the clip where you were like, when a hood dude comes up to you and he says, I don't mean to be disrespectful, you know he's about to say something. Like, I was like, that is so true. But how would you describe your brand of comedy? Because you often hold a mirror up to societal issues. So how do you tackle weighty issues like misogyny, religion, violence? Is that by a conscious choice?
I don't know how I would describe my comedy except like it's just like all me. And if like we look at who I am, like I'm a Black Muslim woman in America. So my experiences are going to have racism, they're going to have sexism, they're going to have some level of phobia, you know, because that's the life that I'm living. And so I just talk about what I've experienced. And, you know, like I said, I grew up in New York. So even when, like, 'cause I'm not going to say anything political, you know, like, I'm not going to be like Biden said, like, that's not my comedy, you know? But I don't know. I just talk about my experiences and if my experiences include something that speaks to a very serious or educational topic, then I'm happy about that. But it's like
That's it, Zainab, because you're a thinking person's comic. Your comedy is for the intelligent. See, I'm more down in the gutter with the people, but you really have to have some brains to sort of catch some of the subliminal stuff you say. I really enjoy it. I like it.
Thank you, Luna. But it's like I guess what I'm saying is I'm not trying to do that. Like if my comedy is for a thinking person, then my socialization is for a thinking person.
Right.
For you to be in my space, you have to be a thinking person. You know what I'm saying? So it's like that's just me. And so my comedy is just like a humorous reflection of me that I'm very proud of. So that's the best way that I could describe it.
How do you, I know on Upload, you're playing a character, but do you get a chance to infuse your comedy in the writing, or is it just purely out of your portrayal of Alicia?
Sometime, I mean, I think we have really great writers on Upload. But I also think that there's like a freedom on our set to understand what we're trying to say and then say that thing in the best possible way. I think that our instincts are also encouraged, and sometimes I'm much more comfortable, you know, telling you what I think than reciting or acting out what somebody else wrote for me. And so sometimes when I follow my instinct, that's just going to be the funnier thing because it's my interpretation of it. And so I think there's like a nice, healthy amount of that on balance, rather, of that on Upload. I mean, there's times where I can do, you know, what's written a bunch of times, and the thing that'll make it to the final cut is the thing that I improvise. The thing that as soon as they said cut, I said, oh God, I'm so sorry I said that, you know, like, you know, but that's the thing that they'll keep. And then other times it's just like, I remember one day on set in season 1, because I learned something, you know, Lunel on stage, it's just us. We're up there by ourselves. You either rise or fail alone, right? If they laugh, it's great, you get it. But if they don't, you eat that bomb by yourself. But on set, you know, it's very collaborative. And so I felt like I had a better way to deliver a joke in one of the scenes. And I kept delivering it the way I wanted to. I changed the line, like rearranged the line, because I felt like this was the punch. And the creator, Greg, he came up to me and he was like, I respect your comedic ability and intuition. He was like, but I think the line is written this way because in the next scene, he was like, in the next scene, it's like, I forgot that it's not just about that punchline there. It's like, I have to give information that tells the entire story, you know? And so I don't mind that. Like, it's, you know, there's a good part of me that I bring to Alicia, but there's a lot of what Alicia does and I'm just like, I wouldn't even be here. You know, it's very far from Zainab.
Now, Lunel, I have a question. I was able to ask this of the other cast members of Fat Tuesdays. What did you enjoy more, being on stage at Fat Tuesdays or being in the audience at Fat Tuesdays?
Both. They were both equally as exciting. Being on stage, of course, is the goal, but I like to watch other comedians as well. I like to hear what the people in the audience are talking about. What did they laugh about? What didn't they laugh about? Because every audience is different, even if it's in the same building. So both are equally as exciting to me.
In the last 5 years, it's been regarded as somewhat of a renaissance for Black women in comedy. What has that progress looked like for each of you in your careers?
I don't
You
think
think
that's
it's
true, first of all. No.
Well, why not?
Maybe for a few select people who play the game right and stuff, but for the renegades, we still out here grinding, out here working. I mean, these two ladies are lucky enough to be on the show. I do not have that title as of yet, but there's where's the Renaissance at? I missed it. I don't know what you're talking about.
I mean, I agree with you, Lunel. I also, in all of these conversations, I'd like to stipulate the difference between comedy being done on TV and stand-up. Because we are seeing more stories told, you know, we have so many, we have the Tracy Olivers, we have the Issa Raes, we're seeing more of that in the scripted space, but I don't think that there's a resurgence, and I'm very celebratory of the Tiffany Haddishes, the Nicole Byers, the Zainab Johnsons, the Michelle Buteau, you know, like all of that. But I just think that they're two very different lanes that people oftentimes conflate, and they are very different. And what's happening in them is also very different.
Tanika, what has been your experience? I mean, I know you're not a stand-up comic, but have you?
No, I've been finding this very informative, what they were saying, because my experience has been what you're saying, is that as an actress who reads other people's lines, yes, or scripted, working in the scripted world, it does feel that way, because when I moved to LA, we were right in at the top of the writer's strike was beginning. And then also the very last TV show that starred Black people went off air right after I graduated college, which was The Game. So the only source for me to see myself became Tristan Wilds in 90210. And I remember that vividly, because I'm like, okay, well, what can a Black girl audition for? And so the only person that I could, as a casting director, reach out to was David Rappaport, who did that one show that had one Black character, because after The Game came off TV, there was no more of us. And so it went through like this weird stage of like where Black people were completely off TV altogether. And that was horrifying to move out to LA to do this. And now all of a sudden there's no people who look like you. And now what you say, I am seeing this wave of in the scripted world of a renaissance where there is Black creators and Black EPs and even Black theater. Black theater is taking over Broadway in such a beautiful way that I've never seen. They have slave play coming to the LA theater scene, and LA theater has been whitewashed, you know. So now we've got August Wilson and all of these. So now they're really starting as these. I hate that it's a trend, but as the trend starts, it trickles down, and hopefully what I would love is that this space becomes something that is permanent and not so trendy that in like 5 years, what happened 10 years ago where there was no Black faces all of a sudden does not happen again. Because there was this huge wave back in the like 90s and early 2000s, you know, the Living Singles, the Family Matters and all that, and then all of a sudden it disappeared. And so I hope that this wave of what's happening now in the scripted world, it can trickle down into stand-up comedians and also be something that is permanent.
But basically, you can be an excellent comedic actress and a lousy stand-up comedian.
I'm not a stand-up comedian in the least bit. So
no, and you know, I'm not talking about you. I mean a person, because there is a difference. You can be an excellent comedic actress and a lousy stand-up comic. Yeah. So there's that. I think that's what, you know, need to be said too. Because they are different lanes.
You're doing your own material. You're writing. Yeah.
You're your own writer, you're your own director, you're your own audio person, your own lighting person. You have everything on you. And when you're doing acting, you have an ensemble, you have technical advantages and all that. There's no great lighting when you do stand-up. It's like flashlight, go.
So I want to end the conversation, and Sneaker, you've already kind of touched on it, but Lunel, let's start with you. How can the industry better support emerging comedians, particularly women and non-binary people in comedy?
We have to get more people to be excited about being behind the camera as opposed to being in front of the camera. The only way that's going to change is if we get Black people in better executive position. Everybody wants to be on camera, but that's not where the power is. The power is on the page or behind the camera. So we need more Black writers, more Black content creators, more Black cameramen, cinematographers, and stuff like that. Then that's what's going to trickle down. The actresses and actors are everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I'll piggyback off of what Lunel said. I totally agree with what she said. I also have two things to add. One is like a very idealistic or hopeful thing to say, people got to care, and that's like, you should not have to be Black to include Black people in stories.
Yeah.
Or Latin people, or fill in the blank, or trans people. You should not have to be that to empathize with that and want to share that. You just shouldn't have to. Two, and this is probably a very maybe controversial thing for me to say or unpopular thing to say, but I do think once we as a people do get behind the scenes and in positions, we can't do the same things that we complain about. We can't tell the same stories with the same tropes that we complain, that we cannot portray the same characters and write the same characters that we ridicule others for writing about us. And I think that that's something that happens often. And I think that that should stop. I think that that would help.
Yes, I agree with all that. You shouldn't have to be that to want to see that, because we live in a world. We didn't script this world. This world came with all different types of people in it, and we have to live in it. So that needs to be reflected on the page. I think we also got to get this narcissistic old white man hierarchy that needs to go. And we got to get more women, more gay people, more trans people, more Latinos, more, everything in, like I say, in the executive positions and stuff where they care. So we can make other people care by telling, our stories that will encompass everybody. You don't have to be of that to appreciate the film either. We come out, The Color Purple is getting ready to do a musical film. What's the audience going to be? It's going to be mostly Black people. Is that a Black movie? It's not a Black movie because there's white people in it. There's white people directing and doing all that kind of stuff. But it gets categorized by the other races as, oh, that's a Black movie. Oh, that's what, people didn't support West Side Story. Like, are you kidding me? Because it was in the movie theaters. Now it's streaming. And by the way, the game is back, Shaniqua.
The game is, yes, it is
on Paramount.
Yes, it is on Paramount Plus. I'm watching.
Where you have all touched on areas that we can still actively push for change in this industry. Is there anything else or anywhere else you think we need to actively push for change in helping broaden the comedy landscape for women and non-binary people of color?
Yeah, change this from 30 minutes to an hour.
Right.
Yeah. What we talked on is like about getting more people behind the scenes, expanding the tropes or staying away from the tropes, but expanding the storytelling. And then also I would think you guys, they need to take more chances on hiring fresh faces and new voices, and not staying in the same what they think is funny.
Or some of the old faces, just because you don't really age out of this, what we do. And it's great to bring new people on and put them on. But then, we got to, like I did a movie for Christmas with Nick Cannon. My co-star was Marsha Warfield. People hadn't seen Marsha Warfield in 25 years, but she was right there in Vegas doing what? Stand up. So we have to reach back, just like Snoop will reach back and get the dramatics or the whispers. Just like they do that, we have to reach back and get the people who who put it down for us before too, I think. Young people gonna make their own way.
Yeah, I was actually going to say something really close to that, Luna. Like we have to like continue to like celebrate one another, because I think that, you know, what I've seen all my life is who people follow, who we create culture. We are the zeitgeist. We are the pulse of all of this. And so if we celebrate us all unapologetically and continuously, then everyone else will have no choice but to fall in line and follow.
Might I say, as we're getting ready to close, Shaniqua, please hit me in the DMs because I need the digits.
Yes,
Zainab, I already got you unlocked. And Shaniqua, might I also say that your left breast has been giving me life throughout this whole entire interview.
Just a little bit
You have a beautiful decollete, darling.
I'm not very hard about the left or the right. And
No, that was a good one. That was a good one. Don't pull the sleeve up now, girl.
Oh, thank you, ladies.
Comedy feels good.
Yes. Thank you, ladies, so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Corey.
y'all.
Bye, Shaniqua. Bye, Lunel.
Bye, Amazon. Bye, everybody.
I can tell from your comments in the chat that you needed that laughter as much as I did. Thank you, ladies. You are as talented and brilliant as you are beautiful. Well, what a powerful day this has been. Thanks for being here. We've enjoyed having you. We've heard together from creators and talent, academics and activists. So my question to you is, how are you celebrating Black joy in amplifying Black voices? How are you sharpening your craft? How are you using your gift to serve others? What's the one thing you have the power to change today? I hope you ponder on that as our next guest gets ready to take us home. They're a talented group of young people serving as ambassadors to the city they call home, the Divas and Drummers of Compton. Most recently seen on America's Got Talent, this group of dynamic youth and teens are being the change they wish to see in the world. You're in for a treat. Again, thank you today for joining us, learning your part in ensuring that this industry is diverse, inclusive, and equitable for all. We'll see you next month for Women's History Month. Take care.
I'm Lauren Simpson. I'm the president of the Black Employee Network in Los Angeles at Amazon. We're here at Amazon Studios with Mrs. Kelly Berry. She is the president and CEO of One Shine Youth that runs the amazing Divas and Drummers of Compton program. Can you tell me a little bit more about the Divas and Drummers?
The Divas and Drummers of Compton is a program that was created to provide inner city kids with an opportunity to stay off the streets. We realize that a lot of students don't have opportunities to participate in the arts, performing arts, music, dance, you name it. They really don't have that chance to in the city of Compton. So my husband and I decided that we wanted to create a youth center that served as a safe haven for kids in the community. So Divas and Drummers happens to be our premier program.
And how long has this program been running?
So we started the program when I moved back here from living abroad in Ghana, Africa. And when I met my husband, we were just like aligned. And we decided that we wanted to dedicate our life's work to inner city development and working with the youth.
And about how many students and young people are involved in the Drummers and Divas?
So right now in our overall program, One Shine Youth, we have about 120 youth, and the numbers keep climbing every single week. So we're always trying to create like these small cohorts so we can bring the kids in, and we pretty much maxed out our capacity at our center. So we're so excited to be able to serve the kids, and we just can't say no to them anymore.
Can you tell me why this program is so important, maybe personally and just broadly to the community?
I grew up in the city of Compton, and my husband also grew up in the city of Long Beach. And we were both able to see the streets from a different perspective. And as an educator, I realized that if I want to make a difference in making sure that these kids see themselves as a part of the educational system, then I have to make sure that there's cultural programming available for them. So One Shine is geared toward making sure that the kids can receive academics and leadership creative through performing arts.
What have you been up to recently?
The Divas and Drummers have been working nonstop. Not only are they balancing school, home life, and practice every day, we just got finished performing at the Super Bowl 2022, and that was really a dream come true for our students. Our kids were able to do the pregame show, and our college team was able to perform halftime along with some of hip-hop's greatest icons. And now we're getting ready to perform for the Laker game halftime show. So we couldn't be more proud of these kids.
You have so much going on. I really appreciate that you're here with us today at Amazon Studios, squeezing us in. Can you give me a little primer as to what we're about to see?
You guys are going to see pretty much like a pot of gumbo. You know, this is Black History Month, but we love us some gumbo. So it's a little bit of hip hop, a little bit of jazz, a little bit of majorette. We're going to bring the culture of historical Black colleges and universities here to the West Coast for you guys today at Amazon. We're really excited about that.
I love it. Thank you so much, Mrs. Berry, and thank you to everybody watching. I hope you enjoy.
All right, everyone, so let's get started. This first piece is a majorette dance piece, and it is a tribute to historical Black colleges and universities in North America. This next section is a tribute to Black boys all around America. For so many years, Black boys have been ostracized from dance in mainstream media. However, this routine is going to highlight Black boys who love to dance. So, in honor of Jamal Joseph, author of this book and graduate of Voorhees College, Dexter Brown, graduate of Jackson State University, and our very own Darrell Saunders, graduate of AMDA with a dance degree. We want to salute Black boys all over and let them know that they can dance too.